Welcome to episode 35 of the 706 podcast. Today we're discussing Diao Yinan, and I'm probably butchering that name, and we're probably going to butcher a lot of names this episode, but we're discussing Diao Yinan's film from 2019, The Wild Goose Lake. And it's sort of an interesting film, got shades of Wong Kar-wai to The Departed, I feel like from Scorsese on Wong Kar-wai. It's kind of interesting in that it starts off and what you kind of think about it as a sort of heist, kind of gone wrong, classic film noir intro. But before we kind of go off into opinions and what I thought about it, having selected it, let's go around and introduce everyone.
Hi, guys. I'm Tony, and I will not mispronounce anything on this episode or just in my life in general.
Hey, everybody. I'm Connor. I'm going to do my best.
Hey, folks. My name is Kirk. I am the liaison to the Chinese government's Embassy of Foreign Relations and Cultural Appropriateness, and I will be overseeing this episode.
All right. So this is the movie I picked, and I'll just say that before I give my full opinion that this is a movie I watched probably about a little less than a year ago for the first time, and up until that point, I had been sort of in a rut of a lot of the movies I've been seeing that were new or either new to me were kind of not hitting me in a very hard way or in a way that I kept thinking about them until I saw this. And I'll explain more and give my own opinion of it later, but let's go around and get everyone's thoughts. And let's start with Connor, since I feel like Tony always goes first.
Sure. I was extremely fond of this movie. I went in with no expectations, not knowing at all sort of what I was about to watch. I was transported by this film. It really engrossed me. I think it's just an amazing piece. Just the amount of kind of control. I mean, that's a theme I may harp on, but just kind of the control of the camera, the control of the scenes. It's unbelievable what Diao accomplished with this movie. But, it's not just a showpiece. I think there is some substance there. A lot of it has to do with the style, I would say. There may be some aspect of a certain kind of coldness, something I can't quite, hang on to with my heart. But I found it just quite a piece, just quite an engrossing piece of cinema.
All right. Who wants to go next?
I'll go. I guess I was not quite at Connor's level with it. I definitely picked up on you mentioned Nicholas Winding Refn in the last episode, and I definitely felt a very strong, I don't know if it's a case of him being influenced by him or maybe having mutual influences, but it did the same thing he does where it kind of takes this kind of noir setup and it strips it down to its most like minimal kind of skeletal elements. So you're seeing these people who aren't even really characters. They're almost like symbols for characters. They're almost ideas. It's like kind of the guy who commits the crime and he's on the run from the law, and that's kind of all he's given. And then there's the femme fatale, and then there's the wife, and just sort of that's kind of all these characters are. And it's more an excuse for these sort of gorgeous images we find them in. They're almost like objects that he's putting in the frame where he wants. For me, easily the strongest aspect of this movie was the cinematography. Reminded me of our discussion of Collateral a little bit with that film's digital photography, and that I described that movie as electric. That this movie is even more electric, like far more electric. Just there's almost like a glow to every character's face, just the way everyone is lit. There are scenes where it's just like astonishing the way I've never seen these sorts of characters and settings just lit in this exact way. And it gives it this kind of life that is really captivating. I'm thinking in particular of the scene where the police have a warrant to search our main character's wife's house. And I'm always terrible with names, but there's a scene where the police go and they do like a warrant. They have a warrant and they search the house, and like every part of that house is lit differently. There's like blue, and then there's orange, and there's like green, but it never feels like weird or sloppy or like incorrect. It feels entirely consistent with this world that's been set up. And while I would never describe this movie as being naturalistic, there's something incredibly tactile about it. Like these settings feel real. They feel authentic, even if they're not realistic. There's a scene where they're at this outdoor market, and I thought, like, that's a real place. I could go there, and I could smell it, and I could hear it, and I could feel the wind on my skin. And he created this incredibly potent tactile feeling, and I felt that throughout the movie and all these different scenes. There's a scene where they're sitting at like a bus station, and there's something about like the sound design and the way it's lit that just makes you feel, it just puts you in that place. And I think that's tremendously powerful, tremendously effective thing. So I think this movie does a very good job of taking something, an aesthetic that is a little bit surreal, a little bit dreamlike, not quite realistic, but making it feel real, making it feel authentic. It creates its own world, its own universe, and that's what I appreciated about it. And I was consistently enthralled by just the images. As for the story itself, I mean, as I said, it's very skeletal. I don't think that's necessarily a flaw because that was clearly the intent. However, I was not consistently in its grip, the story. And there were parts where I was slightly confused, or like, okay, she double crossed him. Why is he running now? Sort of like, where are they? You know, that kind of thing. And that might just be me. The main other thing I noticed about the movie was I thought the way it used violence was very interesting, and that the movie is pretty sparing with its violence, but the action scenes in the movie are incredibly well done. They're very like over the top and almost comic booky in this way that really punctuates these moments of stillness in a way that I thought was very effective. So I think I respected this movie more than I liked it. I can't say that I loved this movie, but I thought it was really cool. That'd be my main takeaway. It's like, it was really cool. So.
Yeah, it was well put, Tony. I would agree.
All right. And then Kirk, who picked this movie last week.
Yeah, no. Boy. I quite enjoyed this movie. And I'm already second guessing that word choice. I appreciated, like, didn't you say, Tony, you can appreciate this movie? Like, I appreciated what this movie brought to the table. I thought it was going, based on the first 15, 20 minutes, I thought it was going in a direction that probably would have been more suitable to my tastes, more along the lines of, like, a semi-surreal, you know, more along the lines of Drive, which to me is kind of has some comparisons, of course, like we've mentioned in terms of the stylizing, but it kind of delved off into the, I don't know if, forgive me, cinephiles. To me, it just struck me at times as almost avant-garde. Like this, the director really was taking these immense risks with and bringing us along with him. It felt like almost like a fever dream at times. A movie that kept popping into my head throughout was Upstream Color. I don't know if you guys have seen that movie. A movie where scene by scene, the aesthetics, the kind of inherent beauty of each scene kind of intoxicates you, and you're almost incapacitated to the point where you don't really pay too much attention to the story. It's like walking through an art gallery almost, and that's how it felt for me. And I can appreciate that as someone who really likes to kind of dive into a story and look at people's motivations all the time, that it was a little light on those elements, with the exception of the female character. Yes, she was expertly played. You know, she's kind of
Femme fatale sort of character.
Femme fatale, yeah. Used quite often, victimized, but exerts her own agency at times. And I thought it was, I thought getting inside her mind was somewhat more accessible than the protagonist. It just kind of, it was a little convoluted in terms of, wait, what are we trying to achieve now? We're trying to turn someone in, but we're not doing it at this moment, but we're going to do it later. But all of that was kind of it was incidental in this. Like, to me, the plot in this movie is incidental to the cinematography, to the style. It really was kind of an exhibition for me. And I like movies like this because they can expand my horizons and they do challenge the conventions of traditional cinema. I think this film, we all probably have some reaction to it that is grounded, of course, in our own cultural foundations. And so we kind of imbue it with a certain exoticism that can make those surreal aspects more stark, like the contrast that much more stark and enlivening in a sense. But I thought overall, well done. Yeah, I don't regret watching it, and I think I'll come to appreciate it more and more as time separates us. So.
All right, fair points from everyone. I think Tony's sort of review of it kind of hit a lot of things that a lot of us probably share in common. I'm most fascinated actually by Kirk's comparison to Upstream Color in the way that you wanted to talk about the aesthetics and the idea of our own cultural knowledge in relation to the movie. But for my own sort of take real quick is the thing I'm most fascinated by, one, is my favorite scene in the movie is the zoo scene when they're hiding. It's like something out of a Haruki Murakami novel. It's like fantastic. It's like one of my favorite scenes I've seen in something new in a long time. That moment like takes me away the way Tony talks about when he talked about like Collateral or some of the emotional weight of like Age of Innocence. To me, that was my feeling when I finished that part again. I just still, my breath was taken away. But second, one thing that, is a term we've been using less so with movies, but more so in video games recently, is the sort of environmental storytelling of the film. One thing I absolutely love is the stylistic aspect, which, we talked about comparisons to Refn, or for me, Wong Kar-wai maybe. And in fact, the stylization is so heavy and so obvious and so on the nose, it often seems to be going against the sort of backgrounds we're in. Whether it's, the slums, I guess you could call them, the sort of apartments, I don't even know what you'd call them in China, but these kind of like restaurant-like areas where, they're eating noodles, on and on. And the part where they're sort of dancing is such a great moment. Everyone talks about like the lights of the shoes going on and that song happening just before the violence breaks out.
Rara Rasputin. I love that song. It was German disco. I'm trying to figure that out. Yeah.
That's why we got Connor on hand, the Chinese and German expert.
The disco knowledge. Yeah.
He spent many years studying.
I can bring
both.
that to bear.
But yeah, these really fantastic moments, and the whole movie as a sort of whole of, at least for me, being a sort of interesting take, a film from China of the sort of idea of an individual running against a sort of system that almost seems, communist in like, of course, it's so on the nose. And of course, what happens when that individual goes wrong, goes rogue, and what happens when the group itself can't seem to finish its co-op the way it should. So for me, there's a lot of different aspects, political, cultural, as Tony was saying, in relation to the cinematography itself. But for me, the coldness actually, in a way, brings me in. It makes me sort of establish my own ideas of warmth in relation to the movie. So for me, there's that X factor here, and I just really like it. But, do you want to say any more about the German disco, Connor? You're really excited.
No,
or anything.
Frankly, Anthony, I'm mad. I was wanting to come up with my take, but you basically said it. I mean, yeah, I think this idea of control. We're looking in at this, sort of poor district of the city, that's like a kind of preserve, like the zoo, right? It is this kind of hemmed in place of, liberty, but also chaos. And, what do you think about Wild Goose Lake? I'm not sure. Maybe it's a real place, but I find the title very significant, right? Or the name of the place, right? Wild on the one hand, right, is in kind of free and kind of anarchic, right? This kind of lawless place. Goose, I don't know, geese, right, form in flocks. And that's another huge kind of like theme, are these kind of masses of people and these crowd scenes, which come up again and again. And I think, but as you to spell out kind of what you just said, Anthony, I think like Zenong, our hero, so to speak, or anti-hero, right? He's only in the crowd scene at the beginning, and it's kind of always him sort of being separated from the pack, and then again being kind of against these organized groups like the kind of mafia gangs that kind of run the district, and then also the cops who are kind of closing in from the outside, and they're both kind of sinister in their way. So yeah, I mean, but again, just the sense of just claustrophobia, and again, just too, like that idea of control, you know, and you pointed out that the kind of juicy tension between, on the one hand, we're looking at this very messy and kind of very natural and kind of chaotic place, but everything is constantly so perfectly framed and everything is so perfectly controlled at the same time. So it's this kind of controlled chaos. You know, I just think it doesn't need to be spelled out, but those are just such rich concepts to be playing with and to be juxtaposing. I think it just elevates this crime story, you know, so far, you know. Yeah. That's kind of my 2 cents. I mean, I was just wanted to kind of get that out there as I was thinking when I was watching the movie. I can't give you a really strong interpretation, but
yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, we're so used to style as I think an individual point, something that, you know, individualizes it. But the film also seems to be wanting to say the opposite. It's like the group itself needs a bit of flair. It needs style to actually keep going. The fact is the reason they give money is so everybody could see it at the end of the film. It's the tangible symbol. It's a tangible form of style for them to all sort of lay eyes upon.
So in his, I guess his final question, is Diao kind of like the director? Is he kind of the zookeeper? You know, who's kind of arranging these, you know, kind of caged animals in a way that we can watch them. You know, I don't know. There's a certain kind of gesture, you know, a certain self-aware and self-commenting kind of gesture that I know people can find self-defeating, but I just love, you know.
I just imagine him at Cannes, and they do the Q&A, and he just says, "I am the zookeeper." He drops the mic.
Yeah,
No, I was going to say that's an interesting point about sort of the control and the group identity versus the individual identity, and when an individual goes against the group, and then that seems to be, I guess, the main thematic in sort of the movie is how does a group react, or a collectivist culture, or whatever, any sort of group, any sort of tribe, how does it react when an individual steps outside or decides to kind of become a heretic of some way or rebel? What do you do? How do you handle that? And I remember the one little scene I think of about this is the rather amusing scene, one of the more comedic moments with the cops, where the one guy's wearing the knockoff Versace shirt, which is an incredibly loud, really garish design. And the chief, for the leader's "What are you wearing?" And he's like, it's a cool shirt. He's like, take that off. What are you doing? It is funny. In his own little way, it's just this one guy thought he had a cool shirt, but we can't allow that, you know.
Can't stick out in this
exactly
world,
and then when we see almost the next shot, when we see those bikes go off, it's shot in such a way that it resembles platelets going through a vein or an artery. They look like blood cells, these individual units with no individual identity, who are out to do a job, who are out to take care of a problem, which is what they ultimately do. I do enjoy that aspect of the movie, and the way the cops and this is a common trope of crime stories, right, where the cops and the criminals are kind of juxtaposed and they parallel one another. But I did like their own kind of disputes, and I also enjoyed just the sheer ruthlessness of the cops in this movie. The movie it's not didactic about it. It's not really over the top with it, but there is a kind of a casual cruelty to them that I appreciated. Where the scene I mentioned earlier, where he's in the wife's home, and he says, "Yeah, your brother resisted arrest. Sorry." Just very matter of fact, no further explanation. He resisted arrest, so yeah, we had to kill him. Yeah. And then when they kill our main character at the end of the movie, and they pose for this photo op with him, and there's something very grotesque about it, and it's just you know. So I thought that was kind of interesting as well.
That doesn't necessarily have to be a cinematic styling. It could just. You know what I mean? Throughout the movie, I was trying to understand, is this the director's flavor, or is this actually kind of a mimetic visual of Chinese culture, right?
That's a good question.
It's hard to separate the two because I've never been to China. You know, I don't live in China, so
right.
But so that's a little difficult, a little disorienting at times to understand where we fall. But I wish it seemed like the soundtrack just disappeared after the first half hour of the movie. That was really strange. I don't know why there wasn't any music later on. It's just a kind of a weird choice to go with. I'm just thinking out loud here. I think my favorite scene, my favorite frame or selection of frames is when the female lead spits out his cum into the water. It's such a daring shot. It's it's easy to look at that and just be totally turned off. And of course, that there's a gut reaction of kind of disgust, perhaps, or even sensual feelings of excitement. Of course, it depends on where you fall on the spectrum, but I thought it was so brave, and it's just kind of funny. It's just strange that a movie like this could come out from under the grips of an authoritarian regime, and I don't know what role they have in curating and censoring media that is produced there, but
well, I believe it's an international co-production with France, so I'm not sure the economic situation. I don't know if France paid for the movie and it was filmed in China. I don't know how it works exactly, but yeah.
Well, Diao Yinan had another hit, before Black Hole, Thin Ice, which, I mean, imagine maybe just having a name certainly probably helps him in his home country. But, two things is one, the music. I always felt kind of interesting is the way it starts off is it's classically kind of film noir-y, and then it kind of disappears and the music slowly becomes from the world that we're in, the German disco, as Connor was saying, and then it's gone. So the only music we eventually have is whatever the world wants to give us. And then two, the way Tony was talking about the way the cops kind of end up looking like cells, and then you brought up the way the woman, when she spits into the water, those two become a quick scene of dissolving into cells again. So in a way, the movie's also kind of reinforcing the human body in its various localities.
Yeah, it's kind of returning to this greater mass, right? It's these individual sperm cells going into the ocean to be dispersed and to lose any. But yeah, when I saw that, Kirk, my main thought was sort of I don't think I've ever seen this in a movie before. I don't think I've ever seen another movie where that happens.
I love that whole
not watching
thing.
Enough, interesting.
I've seen it. I've seen it in movies before.
All right.
What kind of movie?
I'll be the first to admit.
A movie that's on IMDb.
Only movies on IMDb.
Is this a movie your uncle hid under the stairs?
It's the unrated version of The Hunt, Kirk.
Oh
God.
Okay, can I address one thing?
Go for it.
Yeah.
My kind of main point of criticism for the movie, and it's something that everyone I think mentioned in some ways, is kind of, when I mentioned I had nothing to hang my heart on, there's a certain kind of distance from the characters, and I felt I wasn't always in the head of any of the characters, or I didn't understand their kind of moment-to-moment motivations. I understand their larger motivations, but I couldn't always understand, well, what is she doing in this scene right now, or why did she react that way, or what is she thinking right now? But so much of it, and I guess, this is kind of lame to blame myself and not the movie. It also is the movie's fault too, but I just feel like there were lots of details I was probably missing. And, I think I would have to go back and watch it again. But there's moments that are so subtle that once I got them, I really was immersed. For instance, just the cigarettes at the very end, where the cop realized, and he gives I a cigarette now after she's made the big bust or whatever, and Zenong has been killed with her help, right? She's offered one cigarette and she takes two, ostensibly to give it to the wife, right? And then he realizes he has no cigarettes left, so then he goes, anyway, it's just like that so little thing, and that was just one moment where I was in it, I was thinking at 100% capacity, and I found it so admirable, but how many of those moments did I miss throughout, maybe that's part of it. But I wanted to mention that as a criticism, but also just mention that there are cases, and that was just one detail that I loved, you know.
Yeah, and to the point, you know, Zenon ultimately kind of dooms himself is when he takes the cigarette, or he asks for the cigarette, and then kind of like uses that as an excuse to finally attack. So it's no longer that group mentality.
Right, it almost makes you, and also that she lights the 2 cigarettes, classic noir thing, now kind of flips. Often it's the man who puts 2 cigarettes in his mouth and lights them, gives one to his, you know, love interest. You know, in this case, she does it. And then when you see her take the 2 cigarettes, you're like, well, is Zenon still alive or something? But no, it's just, in this case, it's actually just kind of this moment of solidarity between these 2 bereaved women, I guess. I'm not sure I completely understand the exact emotional resonance of the ending, but, you know, but yeah, I think it's something like that.
Yeah, I didn't see that she took 2, so definitely, I'm sure that this movie, you can tell, was made with a high level of care. Like, it's a passion project, just so clearly.
You might say zookeeper-like care.
Yes.
Much like the Kevin James film, The Zookeeper. This is a tourist.
Or, I would say even more like We Built a Zoo with Matt Damon. That was...
We bought a zoo, Chris.
Oh, is it We Bought a Zoo?
We bought a zoo, yeah.
We built a zoo.
They didn't build it. They just bought an already built one. So, unfortunately.
Well, we can move on. But final point, too, is I think also, because Connor now made me think about it, is like the film also wants you to ask is like, to what extent does his plan, Zenon's plan, actually succeed that he had way back at the beginning, which is to ultimately use the money that's for him to eventually help the wife. And does he know at that moment, you know, I think there's clues that point either way. Does he know at the moment when he's ultimately, you know, shot by the lake, what's going to actually happen? Or does he take it as a full betrayal?
I don't know. Yeah, I think the movie leaves it ambiguous like so much else.
That's ultimately what he wanted, but at the same time, the wife, you know, like not liking him adds this whole kind of complexity to it. Sorry, Tony.
Oh, no, it's okay. No, I was going to go, I had like a small digression. This isn't a complaint about the movie because the plot kind of isn't the point. But there is something, when you think about it for a few seconds, that's like deeply hilarious about this premise where like, if I just commit enough crimes and then turn myself in, my wife will be set for life. Like, I need to run up my score. Like, shit, is it 500,000? I need to go to 1 million, you know? It's just like,
sort of Grand Theft Auto.
Kills a few more cops. Like, what's it at now? Okay. You know?
To me, I didn't really understand why he, at the end, was he just so unraveled that he wanted to go down fighting? I didn't get that part. Or was it understood that he was going to be killed? He was going to be executed immediately anyways. So
he thought they were like going to kill him, whether it be the cops or the gangsters. Someone was going to kill him, so he had to run for his life. That's what I thought.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. I just want to say one more. I think the lake is symbolizing something. This is like, I sound like a first year like film student. So bear with me, right? The lake is, no, I actually do believe the lake is like our collective subconscious, like, or collective unconscious. Like that's where all of our, this community, that's where they throw all of their biggest fears and their greatest aspirations drown in that lake. So anyways, if you saw the movie, maybe you can relate to what I just said, but it's a cool little metaphor.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And I like that, you know, the fact is they're on the lake when they're in the boat and they're together for a moment, and then she takes the 2 cigarettes. It all relates back to kind of what Connor was saying.
And her hat that designates her as a water
beach bather.
Beauty, it falls into the lake.
Bathing beauty.
Bathing beauty, yeah.
So
yeah.
All right.
So let's vote.
I'm ready to vote.
Okay.
Who wants to go first?
I think I've said most of what I can say. I really want to watch this movie again. I give it a yes. I think it was extremely well done movie, so thoughtfully done. You know, more movies like this, please.
I'm actually going to go a soft no. I didn't really object to anything in this movie. I didn't find it distasteful or bad, or I can't really say that there were things about it I really strongly disliked. It's more just a very subjective sort of like, I respect a ton of what this movie does. It's super fun and super interesting. I enjoyed watching it, but there was that that disconnect, which we all have alluded to, was I think a bigger deal to me than it might be to someone else. I think especially with like a crime story, which is like a sort of thing I generally really like, I need to have a little bit more of an empathy, a little bit more of a connection to the characters and their psychology. And I understand that's not what this movie was really about, but on a purely just personal preference level, I can't quite give it a yes.
Let's be honest, Tony's just putting one in the spite box because Anthony always says no.
I vote for all of your movies, Anthony. We've established this.
The greatest love and the greatest hate.
Until now, yeah.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I've been a deciding vote. This is a little difficult for me, to be honest. Right now I'm trying to like picture in my mind what the 706th best movie looked like, because I'm that much on the fence. And
it's Back to the Future 3. That's the 706. That's the exact.
Oh, is that what it is?
That's the exact one. Yes.
There must not be many movies in the world if that's number 706, because that movie sucked. Man, this sucks. What Tony said really speaks to me, and but I think I'm gonna say yes for this reason.
You want 5G or not?
I enjoyed this movie in spite of its flaws, and there are many flaws for me in the most critical areas. Like, this is a movie whose main dish is fucking hamburger helper, and its sides are like the best, most exquisite, roux and bechamel mac and cheese and grilled asparagus and and lobster aioli. It's mwah, mwah. So I think in spite of its flaws, I will give it a yes, and I do like the experimental nature of it, and I appreciate having watched it.
Well, despite Tony's protestations, we could play the Chinese national anthem now.
By the way, did you guys hear that China is
okay?
outlawed?
Well, all right. Final section. Who wants to go first, or who went least? Right? It was Connor or Tony.
I think Connor.
Connor, what do you want to do?
Last. I'm going to go for a power move. I'm going to let myself go first because I'm prepared. My film is called Billy Liar from 1963, John Schlesinger. This is a British so-called kitchen sink drama that is kind of a realist film, sort of about working class existence in England. And it's about a character who's kind of a dreamer, a character who kind of can't quite grow up. This is our titular Billy Liar, played by Tom Courtenay. He's an amazing kind of sort of forgotten actor, but one of my all-time faves. And this is just, I think, a movie that will strike you as incredibly kind of prescient and modern in some of its concerns. And I think it's just a movie that, if it hits you the right way, I think you'll just have a kind of maybe some kind of connection to it. On top of it also being, just a well-made, tastefully, sort of artfully made movie.
So the movie I have this week is to me, is just kind of what this podcast is all about. It's just like an absolutely classic, eminently discussable movie that I know we will all have interesting things to say about because it gives you so much. It's really a feast in every sense. This is Paul Schrader's Mishima, A Life in 4 Chapters, an absolutely incredible, fascinating, colorful, strange movie. It's provocative, it's weird, it's dark, it's troubling, it's got everything. It's got all the things I like in movies, and it tells a really kind of twisted and fascinating story. I didn't know much about Mishima, but prior to watching the movie, aside from the bare facts of his life, but I find it a incredibly dramatic, incredibly cinematic experience, and Paul Schrader I think this is the most formally audacious film Paul Schrader has ever made. And while I might prefer First Reformed on a more visceral, emotional level, cinematically, this is unsurpassed for him. It is a true classic.
All right, so this is a movie that if anyone would pick it out of you three, Anthony would pick it. So it kind of there's room for laughter here because it is generally regarded as a children's movie. I don't know if that actually follows, but there's some kid-like characterizations. I don't know who here has seen it, but this was a movie that's very prominent in my childhood, may have been a little before your time, directed by the distinguished, I should say, Alfonso Cuarón. It's A Little Princess, the 1995 revival. I don't know if Anthony's seen it. It's about, I don't know if you know the classic tale of the girl whose father goes missing in the war, something along those lines. I haven't seen it in probably 20 years. She ends up in a boarding school with wicked headmistress, but she's royalty. Her father's a prince in a wealthy country, and so it's just kind of very heavily thematic movie, a lot of vivid imagery, and kind of a fun ride that we might be able to laugh a little bit at, but still enjoy from a cinematic perspective.
All right. Well, Tony was sort of rolling his eyes, putting his hands in anger, leaning back into the couch during that one. But let's look at the rebuttals.
Expert over here. Little do you know, that's my favorite. No,
Tony, you look like Scorsese when he saw Infinity War. Like, what the fuck is that?
My only thing with Kirk's movie, and yes, that does very much sound like an Anthony pick, is that like I kind of can't believe you're pitching something you haven't seen in 20 years. I mean, this isn't Barney's Great Adventure, guys. Let's be real. It's not going to be at that level. So, I find it a little baffling. I've not seen it, so I can't comment on it. But I mean, are you basing this off your childhood nostalgia?
No, I've rethought about it. I haven't gone back to watch it, but I very fond, cinematic stylings. And you know what, Tony? How recently did you think I saw Spice World? Did you think I had watched it the night before to prep?
That's what you told me. But okay. And as for Connor, I've seen Billy Madison, and it's not my favorite. That's it.
Nice.
As for me, to Kirk's pick, I say, first of all, you ripped off The Little Prince. Second of all, as if you made it. I don't know. Second of all, there's only room for one children's film in 706, and that's Iron Giant. It's still coming, guys. I'm waiting for the right moment. Don't worry. I haven't forgotten, okay? I'm just waiting for the right moment. As to Tony's film, sorry, I don't know Kirk's film at all. I have nothing substantive to say about it. Now, I have watched Tony's film rather recently. In fact, in our secret other film club, our X-rated, real adults-only film club, we watched Mishima. Highly interesting film. I would say, does it stand up and does it hold on its own if you're not already interested in Mishima, the myth of Mishima, right? This strange story of this great author. I don't know. It's something that I didn't think, I wasn't super fond of it, although I didn't dislike it. I have immense respect for it. I would say, I don't know. I don't know if it's 706 material. Of course, I'm being polemical. We can decide that for ourselves. But those are my 2 cents.
I think whether or not it's 706 material in terms of quality, it's definitely podcast material. So it's eminently discussable.
All right. Well, now it's my turn.
I think I agree with that.
Connor's movie, it was actually on in the delivery room when I was being born. I haven't seen it since. So my opinion on it may be a little flawed, but it could be a good movie. And then Tony, kind of in bad form to nominate a movie about machinima after all the sexual assault allegations have come down. Kind of bad. Maybe steer clear next time. No, I think it's. I don't know. My movie. I would be excited to hear the polarized perspectives. I think you guys would either come out loving it or hating it, and I think that's always a fun time. So movies that can be kind of, yeah, we know it's good, but what is it? Like, I don't know. Well, we'll see. But it's really up to Anthony and what his proclivities are. So where they lie.
Tony, would you say this movie is a better movie than The Canyons?
I'm not seeing the Canyons, but like from what I've heard, it can't be.
Connor,
Good
the
answer.
only thing I know about your movie is that Morrissey of the Smiths loves it and stole like half his
Yes.
lyrics from that movie.
Yes, yes.
Kirk, I haven't seen that movie in about
You have seen
20 years, but you had me at Corona. So obviously, it's a Little Princess.
Yes.
Little
Yes.
princess.
Yeah. I was tempted to go with Tony since he always says I never pick his, but and I've never seen it. And I do actually love Mishima's Spring Snow, the book. It's the only thing I've read from him. But I actually have been wanting
Yeah,
to
I'd
revisit.
say it's worth a watch,
Kirk's
Anthony.
movie
I
a
think
lot.
Definitely,
it's
highly recommend it
cool.
on your own time.
All right. So the regrettable pitches come in.
Also
All right.
watch Billy Liar.
Great choice,
Take it.
Anthony.
Yeah.
It's going to be an explosive episode. Tony's going to come in.
Yeah,
drunk.
it's totally blind. I know nothing about it.
Yeah. No, I was thinking of another movie I'd recently seen. It stars, it's directed by the guy who made The Hangover. It's in a town, like a big urban setting. And there's the guy, I don't know his name, but he was in an M. Night Shyamalan movie. And then there's the other guy who was in that movie with the bad guy and the bank robber. Yeah. But I forget the name of the movie.
Yeah, no, I think I saw that one.
Bozo the
There was
Clown
a
or
guy
something?
who actually shot up my whole theater when I saw it. It was crazy.
No. Oh, man.
Yeah, so anyway.
All right.
Bring your bulletproof vest.
Yeah.
All right. Till next week.